Chapter 611, Fate Councilor. Oravi was situated northeast of the Rorstead archipelago. The straight-line distance wasn't too great, but the safe sea route had required ships to take many twists and turns, causing the distance traveled to increase by several hundred nautical miles. It was originally a primitive island that harbored many kinds of beyonder creatures without any humans inhabiting it. After the hunting era came to an end, the Lowen Kingdom banished certain criminals there, causing Oravi Island to gradually have villagers and towns. When more eastern islands were discovered and colonized, the area attracted many new immigrants due to the convenience of the sea route and its rich natural resources, making it a rather thriving port city. The light from the lighthouse tower appeared so warm in the dark environment as it led liners towards the harbor for them to dock.
We finally arrived. My gratitude to the Crimson Moon and Fate for blessing me.
Darkwill jumped off the last gangway and stepped onto solid, cemented ground.
To be precise, apart from fate, you should thank the Fool and Sea God for their blessings.
Klein held his leather suitcase with one hand as he tapped his cane. Darkwill properly put away the ring box which contained the die of probability, and he didn't delay in asking where the bellman Carnot stayed. He rented a carriage and went straight for St. Draco Cathedral. He then entered the magnificent bell tower, which boldly used the colors of red, blue, and yellow. Inside the bell tower, Carnot had a cramped room he could call his own. "Knock! Knock! Knock!" Darkwill knocked on the door thrice, eager to hand over the item on his person. With a creak, the brown wooden door opened, and out came a large man who was slightly hunched. He looked to be in his 40s, and individually, there was nothing strange about his facial features, but when put together, it was filled with an unharmonious vibe. Klein only took a glance and discovered that his eyes weren't leveled. His nostrils were of different sizes, and his left facial muscles were slightly loose, causing the corner of his mouth to droop slightly. It was the complete opposite for the right side of his face. Carnot's legs were obviously of different lengths, and one of his arms was thick, while the other was thin. His entire body was highly disproportional, making him extremely ugly. Dressed in a black robe, Carnot glanced at the duo.
Who are you?
Darkwill asked cautiously.
Are you the bellman, Carnot?
Carnot chuckled with one corner of his mouth raised while the other stayed low.
There shouldn't be a second person as ugly as me.
Indeed.
Darkwill nodded very honestly before laughing.
I can tell that you have quite a good state of mind. To be honest, looks don't matter for a man. What's important is their skills in bed.
Tisk, that's because you haven't seen ladies who only have fetishes for good looks.
Having experienced the era of celebrities of the masses, Klein scoffed from the side. Carnot's expression darkened as he said,
I don't wish to discuss such matters.
You have problems in that area? No problem. I have different kinds of medicine that can treat all your problems.
Before Darkwill finished his sentence, Klein took a step forward, afraid that he would end up being beaten to death. He put half his body between them as he said in a deep voice,
He's Roy King's student.
I figured. Roy King once described his traits.
Carnot made way and invited the two in. His room was extremely tiny, with only a single bed and a cabinet which could be used as a dining table. The washroom was at the bottom of the bell tower. Darkwill pulled out a ring box and handed it to Carnot as he forced a smile.
My teacher got me to hand this item to you.
Carnot stole a glance at it and was clearly relieved to see 4 points. He said to Darkwill,
You aren't as unreliable as your teacher described you to be. I can tell that you didn't attempt to use it. That would have awoken it and make it realize that it's no longer sealed.
The chubby apothecary's face blushed red, as he honestly said,
That's because it's relatively quiet now. In another 1 to 2 hours, it will automatically roll itself. It's best you think of a method to seal it again.
Carnot's face twitched.
Again?
Well, I accidentally dropped it on the ground, and then it came alive.
Darkwill wanted to glance at his owl, Harry, but he realized that it hadn't followed him in. It was perched outside the bell tower to serve as a sentry. Carnot's eyes clearly widened as his hunched back nearly straightened.
How did you arrive here?
From his point of view, Roy King's student should have long died at the whims of the die. Darkwill hurriedly pointed to Gairman Sparrow and said,
It's all thanks to this gentleman. He's a powerful adventurer. He provided the most effective protection and a temporary method of sealing the die.
Carnot blurted out the question.
What method was it?
Klein laughed and replied,
Trade secret.
Carnot's expression changed a few times as he pressed his hand to his chest and bowed.
I thank you for your help on behalf of my organization.
Darkwill continued.
Hiring him costs £1,000 and a request. The request is to help him find a mystical item with powerful offensive traits but without very serious negative side effects. He will purchase it at a reasonable price. I only had about £300, so that was all I could pay. I'll have to rely on you to pay the rest.
Carnot fell silent as the corners of his lips twitched.
I only have about £100.
Suddenly there was silence in the bellman's room. The wind from outside blew through the cracks and brushed across the three men's face. Finally, Carnot spoke again.
Perhaps Councilor Ricardo has the money. I'll lead you to him.
From the looks of it, he trusts us. After all, a fate counselor is in no way comparable to a die of probability. If there were really problems with us, there would be no need for us to bring the die over to prevent any accidents and snatch away the uniqueness.
Klein watched as Carnot picked up a lantern from the corner of the room. At this moment, he activated his spirit vision and simply scanned the man. Klein nearly pricked up his brows with the sight. This was because Carnot's aura colors were rather unique. There were no problems with his emotional colors, as they were very ordinary. However, his ether body, which represented his body, appeared unnatural. His heart was green, his head was purple, and his digestive system was yellow. It felt like they were different parts which were mashed together in great disharmony. At the same time, Carnot's soul also gave the same feeling.
A monster that was stitched up internally?
Klein made a rough judgment based on what he knew. After Carnot got the lantern, he turned his head to glance at the adventurer, Gairman Sparrow, and said without much of an expression,
I'm very sensitive to spirit vision. I believe you have noticed certain problems. I'm not a naturally born person. I'm a product of the Church of Earth Mother's attempts to refine the human body. I'm considered a failed specimen, which is why I do not have the ability in that aspect.
His final sentence was directed at Darkwill. Carnot didn't speak again as he carried the lantern and donned a black robe. He hunched his huge body and used the dim light to walk down the stairs of the dark and silent bell tower.
Product of the Church of Earth Mother's attempts to refine the human body? But St. Draco Cathedral belongs to the Church of Storms. Since it's a failed specimen, no attention is paid to it. Carnot turned his back on the Church of Earth Mother and became a member of the Life School of Thought? This is understandable. Both the Church of Earth Mother and the Life School of Thought hold the apothecary pathway, and they will definitely have some overlapping. But why would the Life School of Thought send this fellow, that doesn't seem simple to be a bellman, to the Church of Storms? Is it just a normal disguise, or there's a particular connection between the two?
Klein followed Carnot in a seemingly calm manner as he walked out the bell tower and circled round to a stone bridge. Just as he came close to the left side of the bridge, Klein suddenly felt something as he looked diagonally upwards. The owl, Harry, had flown out as well and landed on a tree branch. "Katcha!" The branch suddenly snapped as Harry plummeted. With great difficulty did it fly up again without falling to the ground. Darkwill was just about to say something when Carnot explained in a deep voice,
Councilor Ricardo is injured, so his powers are somewhat out of control. Once anyone enters a specific range, they will be tainted with bad luck.
Carnot stopped in his footsteps as he threw the ring box containing the die under the bridge.
Mr. Councilor, Roy King's student has delivered the die.
A hoarse voice sounded from deep within the bridge's belly.
Very good.
A silver-scaled palm reached out from the darkness as he held down the ring box, which had fallen onto the mud. Following that, he opened the ring box and took out the milky white dye. His other hand, which was covered in silver scales, also reached out as he held a piece of a paper-like item made of leather. The item resembled a water pipe, but its ends were connected. It revealed a grayish-white color under the crimson moonlight. Its surface had many complicated symbols and labels, as well as many words in Hermes text which pointed to the snake of Mercury, Will Acceptin. Fate Councilor Ricardo pulled the item apart and stuffed the die of probability into it before connecting the two ends together.
Using fate at a small scale to seal the die of probability with periodic boundary conditions, making it remain in a perpetual state of slumber or calm. Indeed, Snake of Mercury Will Acceptin had foreseen such a situation and had made certain preparations.
Klein retracted his gaze in relief, and he heard Ricardo's hoarse voice.
I already know of your agreement, Mr. Gammon Sparrow. I will help you find the mystical item after I've recovered. As for the 700 pounds, I'll immediately augment you with good luck. Go to the few casinos in Oravi and make some bets, and you'll receive the corresponding reward. Remember, do not win more than 200 pounds at each casino. You must not win more than 700 pounds in total.
Which is to say that you don't have the money either. Seeing how you're hiding while injured, it's considered normal not to have money with you.
Klein nodded indiscernibly and said,
Okay.
He waited for about 10 seconds without sensing anything. Councilor Ricardo heaved a sigh of relief and said,
You have become sufficiently lucky.
Is that so?
Klein chose to believe him and didn't disturb Darkwill's report to a senior of how his teacher had been imprisoned. Based on Carnot's introduction, he found a nearby casino and sat at the blackjack table. After about 10 minutes, he walked out of the casino with a blank look. Not only did he not win money, but he had lost a total of 30 pounds.
What happened to the good luck? Why did I believe him? That darn old man is terrible.
Klein didn't hesitate to return to the stone bridge and approached its belly. Ricardo laughed as he coughed under the dark bridge.
That fast? You have pretty good luck.
At that moment, Darkwill and Harry had already found a nearby inn to live in. Klein replied without a change in expression.
I lost.
Lost.
Ricardo ruminated over the word and couldn't formulate a sentence for quite a long period of time. In the dark environment, an ordinary owl nervously flew over. Chapter 612, in hand. The two street lamps on either side of the stone bridge silently illuminated the street, but they were unable to disperse the darkness beneath. Only the crimson moonlight from high above could barely illuminate the brown soil. Hidden under the bridge, Fate Councilor Ricardo remained silent for quite a while, making Klein suspect whether he had already passed away due to his heavy injuries. He guessed that a large reason as to why the luck augmentation had failed was because of this. Just as Klein was about to ask a probing question to determine the situation, Ricardo coughed and said in a deep, hoarse voice,
You live up to the reputation of being a powerful adventurer, capable of temporarily sealing the die. What happened has exceeded my expectations. Ahem, I'm very curious as to why my luck augmentation on you had failed. I'm very regretful that I can't come out and meet you in person. Otherwise, I should be able to see what beyonders from other pathways will find difficult to see, even if they possess relatively powerful spirit visions. This is the uniqueness that the Fate pathway holds.
So the problem lies with me? That's not the point. The point is that you need to reimburse me 700 pounds. No, 730 pounds.
Klein cursed as he couldn't help but recall the orphan, a demisol, who had the nickname of Monster in Tingin's city. The young man, who was equal to half a sequence 9, had cried out after seeing Klein before falling to the ground. His eyes bled, and the fear he exhibited was as if he had seen a devil.
This is because of the uniqueness of the Wheel of Fortune's path of the divine, so he saw something wrong with me. He saw something related to the Grey Fog? Unfortunately, this Fate Councilor is quite heavily injured and has a domain of bad luck around him. There's no way for him to help inspect me. I should ask Snake of Fate Will Acceptin when I'm back. Perhaps he might know something. However, this pathway does have the bearing of a charlatan. He might not directly answer me, and has a high chance of answering in vague terms.
Klein maintained his expressionless attitude and said,
Then, what do you plan on doing?
Ricardo sighed and said,
Get Darkwill here. I'll augment him with good luck and get him to win the money at the casinos on your behalf.
Using the name of the inn Councilor Ricardo gave, Klein quickly found the chubby apothecary, Darkwill. Then, while carrying the suitcase and cane, Klein watched as he kept winning money at the major casinos. By midnight, he had already won £750. After receiving the remaining £730, Klein realized a problem. The reason for the luck augmentation's failure was because of him. Klein held close his bulging wallet and frowned as he thought silently to himself.
Why is that so?
He quickly thought of the thin, invisible, grayish-white fog around him and realized the reason.
After advancing to faceless, the gray fog has integrated with reality to a certain extent. Not only can it help me screen off ravings that aren't too powerful, but it can also destroy any influence that changes my fate to a certain extent. Therefore, this counselor's luck augmentation was ineffective? According to this logic, bad luck, to a certain extent, shouldn't affect me either. What the heck? It doesn't make me become some unlucky fool, but it also destroys my chance of being a lucky man or winner.
Klein secretly shook his head and followed Darkwill and the owl back to the stone bridge. He informed Ricardo of how to summon his messenger and to immediately send him news once he obtained any information on a mystical item with powerful offensive traits. After doing all of this, Klein found an inn at the Oravi Island's port city and got a simple room for himself. Backland. In the morning, Emlyn White walked under his favorite gloomy skies, moving through the thick fog that couldn't be compared to those in November or December, as he once again arrived outside Northborough's 7 Pinster Street. After pulling the doorbell, he straightened his back as he lifted his chin and waited patiently. When Leonard opened the door, he looked at the handsome but detestable face before making way and allowing the visitor to enter. He was still dressed in his homewear, comprising of a white shirt and black trousers. However, he had an additional dark-colored vest draped over him. Leonard asked with a smile,
Have you considered the matter?
No problem.
Since it wasn't his money, Emlyn had no intention to haggle. He even believed that with the attitude displayed by Leonard, there was a high chance of having the price raised if he tried. Sinsampa. Leonard gently nodded and smiled.
Very rich.
I can tell that you're trying to lead me to say more.
Emlyn silently scoffed and replied,
That's not something you need to concern yourself with.
With that said, he raised the suitcase in his hand and opened it, revealing £7,000 in cash. Leonard took out each stack of cash and thoroughly checked it carefully. Then, he pulled off the red glove he wore on his left hand and handed it to Emlyn.
This is the mystical item you require. It can change colors to disguise itself. It's called Tinder. It can raise the wearer's charm, making his words be equipped with great persuasiveness. It can steal the beyonder power of a target within 50 meters. The more you understand the target, the easier it is to steal the power you wish to steal. The less you know, the more random it becomes, and it relies on luck. When the target is at sequence 6, there is a chance of failure. The higher the sequence, the higher the chance of failure. After the theft succeeds, the target will lose that beyonder power, and it will take at least 12 hours to recover. The owner of Tinder will be able to use it adeptly for 10 minutes. And the reason why it's expensive is because it has very few negative side effects.
Emlyn, who silently took in the introduction, had his interest piqued by a mystical item like Tinder. He asked,
What are its negative side effects?
Leonard combed his hair and smiled.
First, when wearing it, there is a small probability of losing something on you. Second, when using it, a particular beyonder power belonging to you will be lost for at least 12 hours. But during this period, it will be the only beyonder power lost. In other words, even if it's used repeatedly, there will only be one power lost the entire time.
Compared to the many sealed artifacts I know of, its negative side effects are indeed trivial.
Emlyn cleared his throat as he nodded. He received tinder and checked it carefully before taking out the stacks of cash from the suitcase and placing them on the coffee table. Following that, he placed the glove into the suitcase and didn't take it with him directly. With the suitcase, Emlyn returned to the Harvest Church just like he did before. Once he entered the priest's break room, he set up a sacrificial ritual. The illusory and mysterious door opened as the red glove tore through the dark and deep void as it was sent directly above the gray fog. At the moment the gray fog made contact with the glove, a tiny, distorted, terrifying face suddenly appeared. It kept evaporating as it struggled to sustain itself. Upon seeing this scene, Klein wasn't surprised. After all, the grandpa residing in Leonard's body was an angel of the Marauder pathway. If Eamon could do it, it was quite certain that he was capable of doing the same. For this, he had made sufficient preparations. He believed that even if the grandpa had really reached Eamon's level, he was able to wipe out the corresponding aura without making him sense the existence of the gray fog, making him take action on Emlyn. Picking up the sea god scepter, which had long been placed in front of him, Klein made the blue gems light up at the same time from a commanding position. Suddenly, silver light bloomed above the gray fog as the lightning carried portions of the gray fog's powers like a storm, zapping the tiny, illusory face. The face dissipated completely before it could even cry out, leaving behind a dead translucent worm with 12 transparent rings. Klein muttered,
Worm of time. But it seems weaker than Eamon.
After some serious scrutiny, he confirmed that the worm was basically identical to the one Eamon's avatar had left behind.
My dear poet's grandpa is of the same sequence as Eamon? Sequence 1? No, not necessarily. Perhaps this is a unique trait of one of the earlier sequences. If it's really a sequence 1, the notion that Eamon is the son of the Creator and a king of angels makes it possible that he has fused with the uniqueness or has another sequence 1 characteristic.
Klein made a guess, but he was unable to verify it. As for what the dead worm of time could be used for, or when its spirituality would completely dissipate, he could only throw it into the junk pile due to his lack of the corresponding knowledge. 7 Pinster Street, Backland. Leonard Mitchell sat on the sofa with his eyes tightly closed. His legs were propped up on the coffee table, as though he was using a short nap to make up for an entire night of being awake. After an unknown period of time, he suddenly opened his eyes and said with a suppressed voice,
What happened? Have you determined the true buyer of Tinder?
An elderly voice rang out in his mind.
The aura I left behind has been eliminated, completely eliminated.
Leonard retracted his feet as he asked in a deep voice,
Did you discover anything?
The ancient voice sighed.
Nothing. Everything was over before I could react. If I were in my best state, I might have been able to grasp the relevant clues. Unfortunately, I've remained in a weak state for years.
Leonard remained silent for more than 10 seconds before he shook his head.
Then we'll temporarily treat it as if this never happened.
Above the gray fog, Klein listened to Emlyn's report and took note of the information regarding the mystical item. He fiddled with the glove named Tinder as he examined it. He chuckled as he muttered to himself,
Heh, this way. I'll have a glove for my right hand.
After serious consideration, Klein abandoned the thought of immediately extracting the mental corruption of the true creator from the all-black eye. This was to ensure his success, hoping to leave the chance to the moment when he was concocting the marionettist potion. According to the records of the City of Silver, even without the gray fog screening, there were no problems with such a procedure. Furthermore, with the gray fog, there wouldn't be any additional accidents, even if it were the mental corruption left behind by the true creator.
I can also use Tinder normally. Yes, when I need to use it, I have to put my cash, pocket watch, and other mystical items above the gray fog. I mustn't let any item become lost. In fact, even if I don't do so, the problem isn't too great. I'm a seer. Do I need to be afraid of not being able to find things I dropped? Heh. In a normal battle, I'll have creeping hunger on my left hand and Tinder on my right. Just the thought of it sounds formidable.
Klein reined in his thoughts and discovered that everything related to the Sequence 5 marionettist potion was ready, apart from the 2 commonly seen supplementary ingredients. He nodded indiscernibly and muttered silently to himself.
I just need to wait for the faceless potion to be completely digested. Then, I'll board the ship of Admiral of Stars, or the Hanged Man, and head east of the Sonia Sea to find mermaids.
Chapter 613, Leonard's Investigation. Lowen Kingdom, East Chester County, Stone City. Having left the manor, Audrey moved into a villa. After she finished engaging in social gatherings with the local nobles, she sent her servant to the Varvat Bank to withdraw a sum of cash. She didn't need to worry about this any further. She could easily pay off the £2,000 she owed Mr. Fool's Blessed, and she could also pay the £1,800 she owed Mr. World for the psychiatrist characteristic. 15 minutes later, Audrey opened the room to her bedroom and glanced at her personal maidservant Annie, who was monitoring the servants while they did their work. She looked down at the golden retriever who was sitting by the side of the wall and smiled. With a smile, she suppressed her voice and asked with shining eyes,
Susie, you'll receive a gift in a while. Are you looking forward to it?
If it were in the past, Audrey would have definitely said, Susie, your present is here, making the golden retriever realize that she could find the actual item in the room as well. Otherwise, it was very easy for Susie, who had been studying the basics of mysticism, to guess that Audrey had used ritualistic magic. With this new sentence structure, the situation could have Audrey receive a mysterious letter or news in her bedroom to confirm that the gift was about to be delivered. There would be too many possibilities as a result of this. Susie could read the joy and sincere attitude deep inside Audrey's heart as she subconsciously opened her mouth, hoping to stir the air to produce a voice. She had wanted to inquire about the gift, but she sharply sensed that Audrey's personal maid, Annie, was approaching. The alert Susie abandoned her original thoughts. She returned to the state of being an ordinary dog as she slowly wagged her tail to express her joy and anticipation. After making an excuse to head out, Audrey entered a chemistry laboratory that she had specially marked out for herself. She placed the psychiatrist characteristic and supplementary ingredients on the table. She cleared her throat and straightened her back as she excitedly played the role of a teacher.
Susie, do you still remember the potion concocting process?
Susie already knew what her present was. In her joy, she barked.
Woof, I remember.
Audrey added.
Try to concoct it by yourself.
Susie looked down at her paws and suddenly fell silent. Audrey was taken aback before a brief silence ensued. A few seconds later, before the golden retriever could speak, Audrey covered her mouth without any atypical response and giggled.
All right, Susie, there's no need to say a word. I know what you wish to say. You wish to express the fact that you're only a dog and am unable to concoct the potion, right? How embarrassing.
At the same time, Audrey, who wore a charming and graceful external bearing, face-palmed herself inwardly. Susie nodded forcefully.
Woof!
Audrey took the opportunity and turned around. Soon, she finished concocting the psychiatrist's potion. She had previously asked Susie and learned that she had already finished digesting the potion on Wednesday.
That's less than 2 months. Yes, a large reason has to do with how Susie isn't being noticed. She can run about anywhere in the manor, or villa and eavesdrop, allowing her to read the true thoughts of the maidservants. That's good as well. She will always share the tidbits with me. If not for her, I wouldn't have known of the dark sides of many people who appear normal and kind usually.
Audrey poured the potion into a bowl and placed it on the floor. She watched as Susie went over and began licking the potion, as she couldn't curb the anticipation in her heart.
Susie might be influenced by the potion and become unstable, but it's all right. Psychiatrist Miss Audrey is already prepared to use placate at any moment. Yes, I prefer the name psychoanalysis. That sounds more professional.
Audrey stared at Susie with her beautiful emerald-like eyes with great seriousness and discovered that Susie's pupils were gradually fading and turning vertical. Dark gold scales seemed to grow beneath her thick fur, and the spirituality that belonged to Susie kept radiating outwards as though it was interweaving with the entire villa's space. After calming her somewhat nervous emotions, Audrey scrutinized Susie's state. As long as something abnormal happened to Susie, she would immediately use the beyonder power, psychoanalysis. Suddenly, Susie's voice sounded out in her ears.
Audrey, I'm done.
Audrey was temporarily at a loss on what to say. In her dream, Daisy returned to East Borough and to the old apartment she had lived in for years. She pushed open the door and saw her mother Liz and her sister Frisia doing the laundry diligently. Daisy instantly became delighted and was just about to join them. She was in charge of ironing the laundry. At this moment, she heard knocking at the door. She turned her head and realized that the visitor was a young man in a black and white checkered police uniform. The officer had black hair and green eyes, with a somewhat blurry face. He held a notebook and fountain pen as he asked,
In the Capim case, apart from what you mentioned, is there anything else you didn't mention to us?
Daisy answered in a rather groggy manner.
It's all nothing important.
The handsome officer looked down at his notebook and said,
It's fine. I'm willing to listen.
Daisy looked back at the clothes which were hung up, feeling as though she had forgotten some instructions. N.A. She honestly described all sorts of trivialities. In the end, she said,
After I was abducted, my mother and sister had hired a private detective to search for me. His name is Mr. Sherlock Moriarty. He's a good man. Although he didn't find me directly, he later contacted a reporter to help me get compensated with the foundation money.
The black-haired and green-eyed officer looked up again and glanced at Daisy before revealing a warm smile.
Very good. Your answer is very satisfactory. Do you still remember the private detective's appearance?
Daisy nodded. Without any alarm, she saw Mr. Sherlock Moriarty standing beside her. The detective had grown a thick beard and wore gold-rimmed glasses. It was almost identical to the one in her memories. After the black-haired, green-eyed officer sized up the image a few times, he seemed to vanish at some point in time without Daisy realizing it. For some reason, her mother and sister had also vanished. She ran through East Borough in search of the familiar figures, but she ultimately woke up from her depression and sorrow. When she saw the dark ceiling of her school dormitory, she lay there in a daze for seconds. Daisy didn't make a sound as she turned her body and buried half her face into the pillow. By the corners of the pillow, a wet stain gradually spread out. The person who had entered Daisy's dream was none other than Leonard Mitchell. Although his investigation of the commonalities of the two cases was to give him time to deal with matters of his own, he didn't forget to act in a perfunctory manner. In the end, he really discovered a problem.
In the cases of Lenavis and Capim, a private detective named Sherlock Moriarty was involved, including his friend, reporter Mike Joseph. Although they had only appeared on the outskirts of this matter, it's also a direction for the investigation. That Sherlock Moriarty looks somewhat familiar. Which fugitive is he?
Leonard recalled what he had seen in the dream as he wore his red glove and entered the basement of St. Samuel Cathedral. Just as he greeted the team captain, Soest, he saw a partner approach and hand him 2 thin sheets of paper.
The information regarding the red-eyed man from the Harvest Church is all here.
Leonard asked with a smile.
Thank you. Do you want to have lunch together?
The Nighthawk shrugged and said,
No, as long as you stop making me have nightmares.
Leonard smiled as he received the dossier.
Deal.
He stood there without being in a hurry to sit down as he casually browsed through it. Emlyn White, a vampire, currently under the jurisdiction of the Church of Earth Mother. He once vanished for a period of time. His parents had hired private detectives to find him. Thanks to a particular Mr. Stewart, this matter was ultimately resolved by the famous detective Sherlock Moriarty. Leonard's smile gradually froze as his expression turned serious. He repeated this name in his mind.
Sherlock Moriarty?
Klein wasn't in a rush to find an opportunity to engage in true acting. He toured Oravi Island's port city with the mindset of a tourist, finding a brief and rare moment of relaxation in his tense life. This city had mostly immigrants from Loen. The cuisine wasn't much different from the east coast of the kingdom, with the only difference being that there were rare fruits and all sorts of seafood here. It was also quite a unique trait of the city. Prekchuema, This place was rich in natural resources and was located in a key location on the safe sea routes. The standard of living was pretty good. Even the farmers in the suburbs could save up some money through their fruit gardens. This didn't mean that Oravi didn't have poor people or the lower class. This class was mainly made up of people who were former slaves. Lowen's parliament had long abolished slavery. After chewing a juicy and sweet fruit, Klein watched the sky turn dark. He took a turn at the corner of the street and entered a bar named Sweet Lemon. It was a famous gathering place for adventurers in Oravi. Klein planned on buying the 2 remaining supplementary ingredients of a marionettist, the relatively common drago tree bark and Sonia golden spring water. At this moment, the bar was rather lively. There were many people holding up cups around the boxing ring as they cheered loudly. There were people who looked like adventurers at the surrounding tables. They were discussing all kinds of rumors in hushed tones. Just as Klein was squeezing towards the bar counter, he suddenly heard his name. A green-eyed man in his 30s held half a glass of liquor and spoke to 2 men and 2 women in the corner. It was a mystery if they were merchants or adventurers.
I'm Gehrman Sparrow. You should know who I am. I received a treasure map and need to hire some helpers. It's not because I'm afraid, but it's because I can't carry that much treasure alone.
You are also named Gehrman Sparrow? Treasure map. Why does it sound like a scam? My killing of Wormtongue has already reached this place from Biome. Yes, it was likely communicated via a telegram or visitors. Therefore, many people know of my name and deeds but do not know what I look like. Cheats are using this opportunity to pass themselves off as me to cheat others.
Klein moved over as he came to a realization. The green-eyed man drank a mouthful of liquor and slammed the glass onto the table.
I don't mind whether you refuse or agree, but I hate it when people make me wait. Do you wish to be like Wormtongue?
The young man opposite him said, slightly intimidated,
I know you're a powerful adventurer.
The green-eyed man cut off the man's words.
So?
At that moment, he felt his collar tighten as he was lifted up by someone and thrown out the door. Klein didn't provide an explanation as he directly threw the man out of the door with a stoic expression. Then, he drew his revolver and aimed it at the spot where the man had fallen to the ground. He pulled the trigger without any hesitation. Bang! Just as the green-eyed man fell to the ground, he saw a spark light up at the ground near his crotch. He was so frightened that he swallowed back his cursing and scrambled away. Without any explanation, his weak performance proved that he wasn't Gehrman Sparrow. Klein ignored the victim, who stood there in a daze. He politely blew at the mouth of his revolver before stuffing it back into his underarm holster. Following that, he walked slowly to the bar counter in the resulting silent atmosphere. Chapter 614. Adventurer Association. Klein sat in front of the bar counter and slammed his fist onto the counter.
1 glass of Southville beer.
Behind him, a few bouncers hesitated about whether to come over to give him a warning or pretend that no one had fired a shot. The bartender signaled to the bouncers with his eyes as he picked up a glass and chuckled.
Why don't you try a cup of sweet lemon? Our boss once went to Trier to learn cocktail mixing. He has mastered many of the cocktail recipes left behind by Emperor Roselle, and he has created the most popular sweet lemon in Oravi on his own.
Klein wasn't moved, as he calmly replied,
I only drink beer.
All right. The bartender wasn't in a rush to get the bottle of Southville beer, as he said with a smile.
Sir, are you an adventurer?
Klein nodded without saying an answer. The bartender didn't hesitate as he said with a smile.
Perhaps you should meet our boss. He's very friendly to new adventurers and is willing to treat them to drinks. Besides, there will be some aid offered to you.
Klein, who had come with the intention of purchasing the supplementary ingredients of a marionettist, didn't reject the offer. He took out a brass penny and flicked it before catching it firmly. He placed the penny on the bar counter as a tip to thank the bartender for the information before slowly standing up and walking to the second floor under the lead of a bouncer, where he entered a room at the other end of the corridor. The room was covered with thick brownish-yellow, soft carpet. There was a faint smell of high-quality coal burning mixed with the aroma of a cigar. A middle-aged man with his blonde hair combed neatly backwards was leaning on a reclining chair, sucking at his cigar as he read the papers. Surrounding him were 6 bodyguards. Although Klein wasn't a beyonder of the spectator domain, and he was unable to determine any unique traits or the strength of these bodyguards, nor was he from the mystery prior or monster pathway, he could see certain secrets. He could notice things others wouldn't be able to discover, but his spiritual intuition made him believe that these bodyguards were definitely beyonders who could threaten him to a certain extent. The middle-aged man put down the newspaper and pulled at the collars of his black shirt before slowly standing up. He extended his right hand and said,
"Welcome to Oravi, my adventurer friend."
His blue eyes had a smile to them as he looked rather sincere. Klein extended his right palm and smacked palms with him without a word. He was waiting for the man to speak. The middle-aged man pointed to a sofa opposite the reclining chair and chuckled.
"I'm the boss here, Bilt Brando. I was once an adventurer with quite considerable strength. I've lived to this day and have earned quite a bit."
He's very confident with his strength, thus daring to directly say it.
Klein didn't stand on ceremony as he sat down. He leaned his body slightly forward as he expressionlessly waited for Bilt to begin talking. Seeing no response from the adventurer, Bilt sat down again and sucked at his cigar before leisurely saying,
"To be honest, there's a motive behind me meeting with every new adventurer."
He pointed to the sea map on the desk in the table. He said with a magnetic tone,
"East from the Rorstead archipelago is where the sea gets progressively messier. The strength of the military and church begin to dwindle, to the point of them only being able to protect their own harbors. The sea around here is a pirate playground, extremely disadvantageous to us adventurers. Therefore, I wish to organize everyone to form a loosely connected alliance, so that we can band together when faced with danger. This alliance doesn't have any strong binding terms. You can choose to turn a blind eye when other adventurers encounter danger, and no one will punish you. However, if you were to encounter a similar situation, don't hope for help to be provided. In addition, I can promise one point. Adventurers of the Alliance will be able to get the prices of the lowest nature when purchasing items from me. When selling their spoils, they will at least get market price."
After finishing the description, Bilt smiled at the new adventurer. He chuckled and asked,
"What do you think of it? Are you interested in joining this loose alliance? Don't worry, you won't need to make any additional payment. Our purpose is only to render assistance when faced with pirates."
Klein nodded.
It sounds pretty good.
Haha, I think so too. I once thought of naming this association the Adventuring Brotherhood, but I felt that Brotherhood is overly constrained, so I changed it to Adventurer Association.
Bilt said in a self-deprecating manner. Having said that, he lowered his hand with the cigar and smacked his lips. He shook his head and smiled.
"Sorry, I forgot to ask your name."
Klein maintained his posture and replied in a deep voice.
Gairman Sparrow.
Gairman Sparrow.
Bilt's eyelids jumped as his smile instantly stiffened. The guards around him clearly tensed up as though they were facing a formidable enemy. Bilt rapidly composed himself and didn't verify whether he was the real Gairman Sparrow or a cheat who was only passing off as Gairman Sparrow. He chuckled and said,
"Is there anything you wish to buy? I have quite a lot of good stuff over here."
Sonia's Golden Spring Water.
Klein said with a calm expression while inwardly feeling cautious. He didn't mention the Drago tree bark since there was a high chance of buying the ingredient at herb stores. Bilt Brando heaved a sigh of relief and smiled.
"Easy. 30 pounds for 100 milliliters. Trust me. Even if you head to Sonia Island, it will only be a few pounds cheaper than this price. Those barbarians from Fasak have sealed off the fountain's source, so it's difficult for others to get any of it."
Deal.
Klein had a rough idea of the price of the Golden Spring water, and he knew that 30 pounds for 100 milliliters was indeed rather cheap. After completing the deal, Bilt was just about to speak after some deliberation when he suddenly heard knocking. After receiving his permission, a bouncer entered and leaned over, whispering into his ear. Bilt's expression instantly sank as his entire person appeared abnormally cold. He suffused an indescribable killing intent.
Indeed, he has quite impressive strength. If he wasn't a famous adventurer in the past, he was a famous pirate. He should be a mid-sequence beyonder.
Klein looked at him as he calmly made an assessment. Bilt turned his head and said to Klein with some difficulty,
Mr. Sparrow, I have matters to tend to. We can have drinks together if the opportunity arises.
Okay.
Klein slowly got up, without any intention of involving himself in Bilt's matters. Of course, this didn't mean that he wasn't curious, but curiosity was never something that could change the way he did things. After leaving Sweet Lemon, Klein successfully returned to his inn. City of Silver, daytime, which was marked by frequent lightning. After Derek Berg finished practicing all the different Beyonder powers of Solar High Priest, he followed the edge of the training field and headed for the Twin Towers. After numerous tarot gatherings, he gradually gained an understanding of the pattern and roughly knew the frequency of the alternating lightning before he would be pulled above the gray fog by Mr. Fool. And now was the final day. Because of this, he had to go to the library to read through historical information involving ancient gods so as to offer them to Mr. Fool. After passing through the partitioned area of the training field, Derek subconsciously looked inside and saw exploration members resting inside. It was the exploration team led by the 6-member council's chief, Colin Iliad. They had recently finished the exploration based on the information they had received from Jack, and they had returned to the City of Silver, where they were now in quarantine. Derek retracted his gaze with a somewhat heavy heart as he went all the way to the steeple and went to the 3rd floor where the library was. He was just about to walk to the bookshelf that held all the ancient books on legends when he caught a familiar figure through the corner of his eye. It was a fair and beautiful woman in her 30s. She wore a long black robe embroidered with mysterious purple patterns. Her curly, silvery gray hair cascaded down. She was none other than the elder of the 6-member council, who had been imprisoned for a prolonged period of time, Lovia Tiffany. She swept her faint gray eyes over as Derek felt his soul being penetrated. He couldn't help but stiffen for a second.
Greetings, Elder Lovia.
He hurriedly lowered his head as he pressed his hand to his chest. Lovia walked over and nodded gently.
I've been removed from quarantine.
She turned and left after calmly saying that, as though she was making an announcement. Derek stood on the spot as a layer of cold sweat seeped out from his back.
Why has she been released? The 6-member council has already determined that she's all right.
Derek thought as his nerves tensed up in an abnormal fashion. Monday afternoon, above the gray fog, Klein placed his elbows on the armrest as he crossed his fingers and watched as beams of crimson light lit up before receding into blurry figures. Then he heard Miss Justice's brisk greeting.
Good afternoon, Mr. Fool Tilda.
Chapter 615, Grayish-White Fog. While Miss Justice was doing the greetings, the hermit Cathlaya maintained her silence as she observed as she did before. She didn't involve herself in matters, as though she was an outsider at this gathering. She watched as Miss Justice and Miss Magician conjured their Roselle diary pages to pay off their previous debts. Then she carefully glanced at Mr. Fool without daring to look straight at him. Yet she still wasn't able to see further through the special gray fog. Her dark purple eyes were only capable of seeing clothes that were definitely conjured. With the 3 pages of Roselle's diary, Klein wasn't in a rush to read it like before. After all, he had already interacted and used a Grade 0 sealed artifact, and knew what a uniqueness of a Beyonder pathway looked like. He had even intimidated such a divine artifact, so he believed that regardless of Emperor Roselle's content, there was nothing that could shock him greatly. Klein joked inwardly as he surveyed the long bronze table in interest.
Unless he was given a demoness blessing by some powerhouse with a unique ability and temporarily became a woman. Ma'am Hermit's curiosity is different from Miss Justice and Company's. She pays great attention to the matter of Roselle's diary?
Klein retracted his gaze and took note of this discovery. Then he casually read the yellowish-brown goatskin. 22nd April. We plan on entering to explore the abyss. 23rd April. We followed the pitch-black ocean, passed through the liquid-like fog, and arrived at the mountain peak that resembled a monster. Behind it was endless black fog. It seemed to blanket an entire continent. However, looking at the bottom of the peak makes it seem endless and without limit. I had joked with Edwards that if I were to commit suicide by jumping off that cliff, I might never fall to the ground, forever in a state of falling. Upon seeing this, Klein nearly pricked up his brows. He couldn't believe that Roselle would dare to organize his own knights and sailors to explore the periphery of the region after seeing the abyss.
Isn't he afraid of dying? Legend has it that it's a place that can corrupt everything, causing all life to perish. At this stage, Roselle definitely hadn't reached Sequence 4, and he wasn't a demigod. He was at best a Sequence 5, or even lower. If it were me, I definitely would have turned the boat around and reported it to the church.
In that instant, Klein gained a deep understanding of the huge difference between him and Roselle. In addition, Roselle's description of the abyss's periphery had reminded Klein of the mysterious stone doors of Amon's mausoleum. A similar scene had appeared after the Church of Steam and Machinery's Archbishop Hormic's puppet made contact with it.
I wonder what Roselle discovered there. At the very least, he didn't die from his exploration. He still had an exciting life after that.
Klein moved his gaze down and read the remaining content on the diary page. 24th April. We proceeded down the peak in an attempt to probe deeper. The thick black fog is biting cold, as though it can erode flesh and the soul. Haha. Luckily, the Dark King I'm on board has certain items that resist this corruption, or I'll suspect that me and my Knights of the Apocalypse will become members of Farron's Undead Legion. It's very quiet, and we didn't discover anything. 25th April. We saw devils, but they were in the form of rotting corpses. Behind the black, jagged mountain, below a slush-filled opening that one cannot call a path, there were different devil corpses that were either in normal or unimaginable places. It was as though they had all been killed at the same moment. 26th April. Either corpses or silence. There's no end up ahead. The items on the Dark King has begun to show signs of corruption. I've seldom had fear over the past few years, but here that fear of the unknown is like an invisible hand that clasps my heart tightly. I have to leave. I have to return. I can't stay here any longer.
What happened after this? Emperor Roselle was very successful in escaping the abyss's periphery, or did he encounter something else? What does the abnormality over there symbolize? An intense battle?
Klein subconsciously had some sense of anticipation as he flipped to the second page, only to be let down that it wasn't connected. 8th May. My beloved Bernadette is almost 2. The older she grows, the more likable she is. She's indeed a young lady who doesn't let down the excellent genes of her mother and I. Hearing her clearly call me Daddy and seeing her bubbly figure, I suddenly felt a sense of satisfaction. Ever since I transmigrated to this world, I've done many things. I can say that some aren't honorable, but I've not felt any shame about it, nor have I ever regretted it. On the one hand, this has to do with me finding it very difficult to curb my desires, making it easy for me to be influenced by my environment. Heh, I have to thank fate that I've not met a desire apostle from the devil pathway. According to the records, I would definitely succumb to beyonders of this sequence. I might even be instantly killed. On the other hand, I still have a sense of alienation from this world. My parents in this world are very nice to me. I've also worked hard to make them proud, but I know that my feelings for them aren't substantial. Similarly, this is how I treat Matilda. It's more a possessive instinct rather than love. I have to admit that my mental state is like playing a role-playing game in virtual reality. My parents, brothers, and friends are all non-playable characters. I can devote some of my feelings to them, but never anything serious. Therefore, I can join all kinds of corrupted gatherings without any sense of guilt. I can face people I know well in a cold, ruthless manner. It's just like when I played the Elder Scrolls. I could slaughter an entire village just for a chicken. But after Bernadette was born, I realized that I had an additional sense of belonging to this world. I was no longer as estranged from it. This is my child, a living child of mine. Perhaps this is what so-called maturity is?
Without children, it's impossible to realize this feeling. No, I don't even have a girlfriend. However, I have to be alert about this state of mind that's mentioned in this entry. It might not exist in the past, but it doesn't mean it wouldn't appear in the future. The higher the sequence, the greater one's godhood is than their humanity.
Klein sighed silently as he flipped to the third diary page. 6th January, a brand new year, a brand new beginning. After advancing to artisan, I finally have the powers to do that thing, that is to create the mysterious silver plate in my memories. There is a high chance that my transmigration was a result of it. In fact, after I became a savant, I could already recall its appearance, as well as the strange symbols and patterns on its surface. But the past me could clearly sense that I wasn't able to replicate something like that. 9th January. I finally succeeded after repeated failures. Holding the silver plate filled with special symbols and patterns, I tried hard to inject my spirituality in a bid to activate it. An endless grayish-white fog seemed to surface before my eyes, but nothing happened. Is it a problem with the material, or am I lacking certain requisites? 10th January. According to my recollections of my transmigration experience, I restored my past state, believing that I no longer lacked anything. However, the mysterious silver plate only showed me the strange gray fog. It wasn't able to help me do anything. Since this doesn't work, how did I succeed in my transmigration back then? I temporarily gave up on my attempts, and I destroyed the silver plate I created. Perhaps when I'm a high-sequence beyonder and become a demigod, I will have a way to interpret those patterns and symbols to figure out the truth behind my transmigration. Yes, I'll definitely become a demigod. I'm the protagonist of this era. Klein's eyes suddenly shrank when he read the diary entry.
Grayish-white fog? The Emperor saw an endless grayish-white fog after replicating the mysterious silver plate from Earth. There happened to be an immutable, endless gray fog beneath his feet. Could it be that our transmigrations have to do with this mysterious space? But why is the Emperor unable to enter, but I can? According to the Emperor's diary entries of the last few stages of his life, he definitely didn't crack the mystery of the silver plate. Otherwise, he wouldn't have not thought of this place when he was in his moment of great despair and mania. He wouldn't have not used this place as his crutch.
Klein raised his head as his gaze landed outside the ancient palace. He recalled that deep in this mysterious space, there's a staircase of light that seemed to lead to heaven. It seemed to correspond to his sequence. The staircase appeared to be built for giants, and its destination was the gray fog, which seemed to support something that stood in midair.
The secret of our transmigration lies there?
Klein made the diary pages in his hand vanish before he leaned back into his chair and said with a normal tone,
"You may begin."
Derek originally wished to bring forward his request to purchase the Sequence 6 potion formula after Solar High Priest, but Elder Lovia's release made him temporarily abandon his plans. He couldn't wait to mention everything that had happened, wishing to obtain the necessary guidance. Considering how this was still the transaction segment, he held back his desire as he waited in silence.
There's something on Little Son's mind. Something unexpected happened in the City of Silver?
Audrey thoughtfully retracted her gaze and similarly didn't request to purchase anything. At this moment, Alger surveyed the area and voiced out,
"I need the potion formula of Ocean Songster."
Indeed, he's already a Sequence 6, a wind blessed. Isn't he someone from the Church of Storms? Why is he looking for the Ocean Songster's potion formula elsewhere? Obtaining it internally from the church is a lot easier. He has secrets he wishes to keep from the Church of Storms? Or was he just pretending to be someone from the Church of Storms?
Catalea instantly had many theories as she gently took note.
I can help you take note.
Upon noticing the hermit's response, Alger asked,
"Ma'am, is there anything you need? I can search for clues ahead of time so as to trade for the potion formula.